Welcome to Universal Man. My name is Mark Weppett. I'm here to help you unleash your apex potential. And today we have, I think, an important and inspiring, but rather sad video, because today we're going to be talking about the passing of the great Gary Wilson of Your Brain on Porn. For those of you who don't know, Your Brain on Porn is kind of like the premier place to go to learn about the science behind porn addiction. And Gary and his work there was absolutely instrumental in my personal transformation. He changed my life, and in many ways, he is a really true hero to me. And his passing really it affected me. It affected me a lot, and so I wanted to tell the story as to why it affected me and what and just highlight some points that I think make Gary's life so special, and at least the parts that I was able to see in his work on Your Brain on Porn, and how he can, and the lessons we can learn, like any man can learn from what Gary did. Now, before we get into it, I just want to, let you know that there is a website called GaryWilson.life that you can go to, and you can, if Gary's work affected you in any kind of positive way, you can go and you can leave a comment there, which I think is very nice. I did it myself. Additionally, you can obviously find his work on yourbrainonporn.com, and you can find his book of the same name, which I think is now an audiobook as well, it looks like. Give that to anyone you think is could use a wake-up call around porn, because that's what I think Gary's work really is at its core. It's the biggest wake-up call to the most number of people about this horrible habit that has seeped into everyday life. All right, to tell you why Gary's work means so much to me, I kind of got to tell you a bit about my life. And for those of you who have heard this before, bear with me, because I think it's important. So, growing up, I was raised Catholic, and we were always taught, you're not supposed to jerk off, you're not supposed to watch pornography. And I was just horny, curious young dude. And I was like, yeah, okay, maybe, but like boobs are pretty cool. And so I didn't really listen to that advice. And I got hooked on masturbating and porn and that kind of thing at a relatively young age. Probably around 12, 13 is when I really started getting into it. And then I started to feel guilty about it. It didn't quite sit right to me. As much as I enjoyed the female form, something about it didn't sit right with me. And so, I would try and quit sporadically. I remember the most serious attempt I gave to quitting was when I was 15 and in high school, and it was during Lent. I was being a good Catholic boy, and I was like, all right, I could give up looking at stuff and jerking off. And I did it for about a month. And I remember I got so depressed and like so irritable and so frustrated and so just out of sorts that I was like, man, something's wrong here. And then I relapsed, and I remember literally laughing out loud because of how good I felt. I was like, oh my gosh, this was the problem. Clearly, I'm not designed to not have this, right? Like porn and masturbation is good for me. Look how good it makes me feel. And then from that point, I pretty much doubled down on hedonistic sexual gratification. And this, continued through high school, through college, and many ways, my life kind of just progressively got worse, particularly in college. College was a very hard time for me. I struggled a lot with my major. I struggled a lot with my friend group. And I took a lot of it out down that sexual route, a big chunk of it down porn. And I know it didn't help me. And so this all led to a point where, I was constantly studying self-development the entire time because I felt like I had something wrong with me, but I didn't know what it was. I felt like I couldn't focus. I felt like I couldn't follow through. I felt like my moods are really erratic. I felt like I had trouble, actually feeling positive emotion, all this kind of stuff, just very numb to the world. And then I got a software engineering job. I quit it. I was like, all right, I'm going to become a life coach. I'm going to pursue my passion for self-development. And in many ways, I was searching for the self-development thing that was going to fix me. And by the grace of God, I managed to, at that time, stumble across the NoFap subreddit. And I was like, what are all these nutcases? What are they doing? They're quitting porn? Okay. All right. Well, why? Clearly porn is good for you. Clearly jerking off is good for you, whatever. And I remember, I think at that time back, this is like 2012, 2013, I think they had actually a link to Gary Wilson's website or to one of his TED Talks. Either that or they just linked to it a lot in the actual posts. I can't remember. But around the same time I found NoFap, I found Your Brain on Porn. And my mind was blown because you have to understand it completely reframed my experiences. Back when I thought, I'm so horny. Oh, I need this porn in order to be okay. Like when I went that 1 month, basically I was 1 month into a porn reboot and I was experiencing not the natural callings of my body, but withdrawal symptoms. I was deeply withdrawing because by that point I was already addicted. And looking back, I was like, oh my gosh, I made such a big mistake. And his breakdown of the neuroscience was just so clear. And even if you're not a neuroscience expert, he did such a good job of translating it to common sense to the point where it's like, oh, even if I don't understand all these neurochemical terms, it's like, I get what he's saying and like, I can't really argue it. But the fact then that I was a bit scientifically minded, I was able to dig into it a little bit, look at some of the studies. I'm like, shoot, he's like dead on with this stuff. And from that point, combined that knowledge with the community aspect that I gained access to, plus the self-development stuff that I had already been studying, I was able to quit, right? And that's started a huge turnaround in my life because obviously I then went into helping other guys quit. I brought the self-development knowledge that I had, started making YouTube videos, I started coaching, I started doing all that kind of stuff. And Gary continued to help me. In fact, as I started to become like a person in the community, I was one of the first young guys who actually struggled with the problem. I was one of the first guys willing to put my face on the issue. They actually, I'm pretty sure they contacted me. Either Gary or his wife Marnia contacted me, and we started a dialogue. Right, we started to talk things over, and I got to know them a bit. For both of my courses, the current Reforged Man course, both Reforged Man course, but then even more so the first one I did for the NoFap Academy, Gary's work was instrumental. Gary actually, really helped me distill the science down to the most essential pieces because I do think the science is an important thing to understand. It gives you a really powerful framework for understanding what's going on in your brain when you use porn, when you try to quit, and that lets you have a frame for understanding what's happening to you, because without that scientific frame, it's just like, this sucks. This sucks, and it'll just keep sucking. And that's not the way it works. It's like, all right, you've gotten your brain addicted. You're going to go through a withdrawal period. These withdrawal symptoms, they'll suck. They'll ebb and flow, but eventually they're going to taper off and fade, and then your brain's going to return to a natural, healthy state where it's gonna be able to function better. You're gonna be able to focus better. You can clean up your dopaminergic system so that you can be more motivated, aligned, and healthier, and all this kind of stuff. And plus, beyond the science and the studies that they collected, they also collected thousands of like recovery accounts that you could just go to and see firsthand experiences of, this worked, this worked, this worked, this worked, this worked. This is what this person experienced, and it's just this massive inspirational font that they created there. And they were always super helpful. Gary was always super kind, always willing to, lay out exactly the most recent research for me, even if it was just for me. Like, Gary was unbelievably thorough with things. Like, if you look at all that stuff, like that takes a massive amount of work, everything he did. Gathering all those studies, understanding all those studies, translating them into plain English, making all the YouTube videos that he did, writing the book. This is a massive amount of effort, and he would be willing to do it just for me sometimes. And I can't even tell you how useful that was, because I didn't want to get into the science stuff. I wasn't the science guy, but knowing that I had that in my pocket because of him, unbelievable utility for helping people quit, because it was always just like, some people, they're not going to buy something in the modern world unless the science backs it up, right? And in some ways that's a crutch for people, but I totally get it too. And there's a bit of a war going on around the science. It's much like the war that went around the science of smoking being bad for you back before it was indisputably proven, right? Like the big tobacco companies, they would buy bogus studies and they would, have the advertisements like, 9 out of 10 doctors recommend this cigarette brand. It's just like, it was insanity. It was all driven by money. And similar things are happening in the porn industry and the studies and stuff like that. So he went to war on that level too. And this is where it starts to get, I think, really heroic on his part. A number of the things that Gary did were heroic, but I just want to point out some things specifically, all right? First of all, Gary never had a porn problem, at least none he ever talked about publicly. And I think he actually said he didn't. And, I believe him on that. But he saw this as a massive issue. He saw this as something that was screwing up men's abilities to live functional, healthy lives, ability to form meaningful, connected relationships. And he decided to just do what he could to fix it. And he was doing it way before anyone else was. And he did it in the face of extreme resistance. And he didn't even make any money off of it. It's like, I've had people like call me a hero for my work, but like, I get paid for this. I built a business out of this. Like, I had a problem, so I've got like an investment in it. Like, Gary didn't. Gary just saw an issue and he said, all right, I'm going to talk about this. And I'm going to keep talking about this. I'm going to keep talking about this even when you sue me. And like, he did. And he was taken to court by this crazy pro porn lady. You can actually go look at the interview I did with Gary. Like, Gary has been on my channel. I think I have 2 interviews with him, at least 1. I think it's 2. And he talks about like the bullshit that people have drug him through during all of this. And he went to war and he didn't back down an inch. And he dominated them. He dominated the playing field because of his conviction, his character, his dedication to just doing things right. And, he just put a massive amount of effort in it just for the sake of humanity, right? Like, maybe they made a little money off of books, but I doubt it. Maybe some. I think they actually might even be, if I remember correctly, Marnia telling me that they actually donate some of it or something like that. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that one. But like, they could have been making a lot more money doing other things if they wanted, okay? But they didn't. They chose, and I say they because Gary and his wife, they both really worked incredibly hard on this, him and Marnia. And beyond all of this tremendous effort, they were wonderful people. I actually got to meet them in person. They were like around the Philly area for some reason. We went to Chinatown and we got some food together, and it was it was awesome. Like he was humble, kind. They were real people, and it kills me to see someone like that pass. But I think the thing that I want to try and convince you guys of is that you can do this too. Maybe not in the exact same way, but we all have our part to play. And a lot of it just comes down to taking a stand for what you believe is good and then doing the work to back it up. And not everybody is going to have a full kind of activist sort of vocation like Gary in his later life here, or even like me. But like, even in your own personal life, all right? All right, let's start with you, okay? Are you willing to stand up for what you believe in your own damn life? Let's start there, okay? If you believe porn is bad, are you willing to double down and quit it? Okay, start there. And then from there, maybe you start talking to your friends about it. Maybe you talk to your family about it. Maybe you talk to anyone you think is appropriate about it and you take your stand that way. But it doesn't even just need to be porn. It's the idea of standing for what you believe in, backing it up, and like doing what you can to make this world better, right? And the people who live like that, like I got to think like it's the best way to live, because regardless of the effort, regardless of what happens, you at least get to have the satisfaction of knowing that you are behaving as a person that you admire, right? Or at least that's the way I look at it. Maybe that's egocentric or whatever, but that's the way I see it. And I think Gary was a shining example of this. And I hope that he can be an inspiration to you guys as well. So, whether you knew Gary or not, his work has massive implications. You know, he'll be written down in the history books, I think, around this kind of stuff. So, you know, if you like I said, if you have anything to say, comment to leave, go to GaryWilson.life. If you want to check out his stuff, yourbrainonporn.com. It's a book by the same name. If you want to see the way in which I am trying in my own way to continue his work, then click the link below and get the Reboot Regimen Guide, where I talk about, my strategies, like the practical how-to stuff for how to quit porn. You can pick that up as well. But at the end of the day, my friends, it's find something you care about, stand up for it, don't back down. And as long as you do that, the bad guys can't win. They can't win. Right? This world is a crazy, weird place right now. It's really, in many ways, freaking insane. Okay? And the only way that it's going to become less insane is if we're brave. We're brave enough to stand up, speak the truth, and not back down. So that's what I have for you guys today. Thanks for listening. Ooh, yeah. I'll see you in the next one.